Good evening, everyone. A warm welcome to each and every one of you all present here joining us on this webinar. To give you a quick brief intro, actually, before going to the intro, let's just do the basics here right now. If any one of you all have any issues with the audio or the video, I request you all to please send us a remark or a message in the chat box of the Zoom window. Now, the chat box for anyone using the laptop or the desktops is at the bottom of the screen, whereas if anyone is on their mobile phones or on their tablets, it will be on the top of the screen. Now, the question answer will be answered only at the end of the session. We'd obviously be skimming through and seeing all the questions. Please do not put any of your questions for the panel speakers on chat window. I'm repeating again, do not put any of your questions for this panel speakers on the chat window. We will be only taking question answers that come in the Q&A section. Again, the Q&A tab is in the bottom for laptop and desktops, whereas for the tablets and for the phone, it's on the screen above you, on the window above you. All right, we're already getting messages from the viewers here. Now, just to give you a quick intro about the genesis of this particular webinar and how we conceptualize this. The webinar has been in participation and collaboration for us at Commercial Design Magazine with Wipro Lighting. Wipro Lighting for the past 25 years has become synonymous with leadership and effort and reliability in the LED lighting industry. With a strong experience in executing lighting projects in both Indian continent as well as in the Middle East, it has established strong performance in modern workspaces, industries, also infrastructure projects and outdoor verticals, which is mainly and largely for the national and the state highways. Wipro Lighting has won several prestigious awards in its work on product design, innovation, and quality excellence. The company also provides its lighting applications and solutions right from smart homes, smart offices, smart buildings to smart cities under the brand identity of Internet of Lighting, IOL, which is tagged as. Wipro Lighting's strong network of pan-India branches and dedicated stockists across the country contribute to deliver seamless services, and this has helped the brand continue to be one of the leaders in lighting solutions for green buildings and human wellnesses. The concept and the theme of this particular webinar in itself was one of their brainchild. So what they wanted to address with the webinar is not just about the workspaces, but also how it's impacting our working styles, how it's impacting the workforce, how the future of work is going to be shifting beyond this. With this, they got together this incredible panel that we have with us right now, who would be taking us through some of their experiences. We have panel members from varied segments. So we have facility heads, we have administration and portfolio head with us, and we have project management consultants, and we have also the architects community representative here. So each of them would be probably giving us an insight into their share of that ecosystem of how offices functionalities and the workspace works in all the broad spectrums as such. Now, without much further ado, I'm going to invite the panel members and the moderator for this particular panel discussion. We have with us Mr. C.T. Sadanandan, who is the Vice President for the corporate services and corporate social responsibility at Tata Communications. Joining him, we have Reema Bhandari, who is the Senior Associate for Strategy Workplace Planning with M. Moser Associates. She is the architectural representative for us on this panel, actually. With them, we have joining us Ms. Jagvinde Pinny. She is the Senior Portfolio Manager for Microsoft India. We also have with them Mr. Vikram Vidyala, who is the Associate Executive Director for Project Management Group CBRE South Asia. And joining them, we have a tech expert and a research head for Mapiq, Ms. Wernand, who is the head of workplace research with Mapiq brand. With this, I'm going to hand this over to Mr. C.T. Sadanandan, who is going to moderate the entire panel discussion and take it forward to us. Ms. Sadanandan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Rashmi, and very happy to be here among all of us today. A great panel, and I can already see there are more than 250 participants who have logged in. Yeah. So good evening, good morning, and greetings of the day wherever you are. Let me quickly take you to the setting of this discussion today. So as Rashmi was mentioning, we are currently going through a very, very unprecedented, unimagined, circumstances of operation, not just for businesses, but for the humanity as a whole. So right now, what we are going through and what is going to come hereafter, and what has been happening until the issue of COVID came across, and how do we put all this together, make clear picture out of it, and how do we take our organizations and people forward will be the key focus of this discussion. Essentially, if you look at how the workplaces have transformed over the past many years, we have seen cubes moving into clusters, and then, in the latest format of the open offices. And all this was possible with the change of mindset, the way we work, and the way we could adapt the technology which was fast evolving and enabling us to be productive. Now, all this has got shaken and all this has got altered to a great extent with this advent of the unexpected visitor, which is COVID. Now, when COVID struck all of us, it was very evident that none of us really knew that how to really go about putting our pieces together and ensuring most important is the safety of the people. And if we are able to take care of our people, then obviously the business continuity would follow. So that was one of the first ever, unprepared, unprecedented challenge that most of us in the corporate organizations had to face. Now we have also come to realize that COVID is here to stay for some time, and we really have to navigate through this crisis as we are going through. And there need to be various measures and processes to be put in place to prevent, prepare, and predict that how the businesses can continue to sustain. Now, creating that new business as usual environment with minimum disruption is a critical requirement at this point in time. So the panel that we have here today will be touching upon various themes related to the overall context that I just shared with you. So first we look at how business continuity has been a challenge and how we have been able to continue transitioning from a business as usual scenario to a business continuity planning, business continuity management scenario with so many challenges, which we were not prepared for. Thereafter, the fellow panelists will speak on how things have accelerated after the onset of COVID. What are the likely changes that we will see at the workplace now on? And when we see those changes coming in, how are we going to ensure certain elements that will keep the workplaces the way they should be? So what is the role of well-being? What is the role of workplace design? What is the role of technology? What is the role for services and service providers to play? So we have a very well, represented panel here, and I'm sure, like me, all of us are very keen to listen to them and learn from them. So let me first, speak about moving from the business as usual scenario to business continuity that all of us are in, at least in India, for more than 2 months now. When we, initially heard about the pandemic setting in, all of us started looking around as to what information can we get, how can we really plan, what do we really need to put as our priorities, how do we enable those priorities to be successful. So that was a critical challenge, and it took tremendous amount of effort for all of us in the corporate, and I'm sure many of you who are in the audience group today would have also experienced the same situation. So essentially, the crux of all that turned out that we need to ensure the health and safety of our employees, our people. When that is taken care, the support to the customers and their needs for managing this, their BCMs and BCPs for the COVID-19 needs will be taken care. We need to continuously manage the ability to deliver, which would mean continue to manage our customer expectations, our contractual obligations as a business continuity, and keep on monitoring that and keep on adjusting that in relation to the changes that are taking place in the environment. I mean, suddenly you have lockdowns declared, suddenly you have new pass systems coming into place, suddenly you have complete movement ban. So all that has come into play in the need for the people managing business continuity to closely monitor things on ground and take it forward. That is exactly the next quadrant, which that is be aware and react to the rapidly evolving situation. So as an organization, while it is easy to now sit back and reflect and say that this is how things have turned out to be, but when we were actually going through it, it was extremely difficult. As I would like to say, as people say that we had to build the plane as we flew, right? Now, what can constitute to an essential element as a successful of a successful business continuity plan? Now, all of us in the corporates or in various other organizations would at some point in time have worked with business continuity situations. Some of us would have actually worked on creating the business continuity planning and the framework required for your organization. But I don't think any of us were ever prepared for a kind of situation that we are currently in. We had once one kind of a disaster or a disruption to the business to be taken care for one location, maybe for a couple of days, maybe for a week. It was a Mumbai floods or a Chennai flood or a unprecedented terrorist act or something like that, which will disrupt the business for a little period of time window, and our existing plans were quite useful in actually negotiating that and ensuring the business continued. But here we were faced with a situation where we really didn't know what is happening. We don't know how long it is going to be in the way it is developing and what impact it can have. So we have the entire supply chains impacted. We have our employee population impacted. We have our facilities impacted. So how do we manage business continuity in this complex, challenging situation? So some of the elements that came through our experience is that firstly, as we saw the early warnings, we started preparing for it. So we were proactive. We were not caught, when this whole thing came on to us. And right in the beginning of the BCM, because this is a different kind of a BCM, you had to define the objective clearly, which was people safety. Communication. In any crisis, any kind of unprecedented occurrence, what can go wrong is false information, fake information, and miscommunication. Hence, it is extremely difficult for the leaders who are managing the situation or the organizations to ensure that everybody gets the right information. Hence, the need for clear communication and communicate, communicate, communicate. There is no harm in over communicating with the right content. That's very important. Concentration, economy of resources, right here. But if we really have to work and ensure our continuity of the business, how do we manage the allocation of resources? How many people will need to work from home? How many will work from sites? Not everybody can work from home because there may be requirements related to this, the type of business that one is in, to either work from a site or work from a manufacturing facility or etc., whatever it be. So how do we make that fine allocation and economy of the resources so that we use the right quantity to get the right output, rather than putting everything together and impacting or compromising their safety. Flexibility, as we said, be prepared for unexpected. So it required that your plans also need to be flexible. You need to keep on redefining, reinventing the plan itself. Collaboration, so tremendous collaboration effort is required from all the stakeholders, whether it is the leadership of the organization, whether it is the supply chain, whether it is your customer and community, whether it is your employee community and their relatives. So many things need to come together and collaborate for this to be successful. And the last slide of mine is that some of the learnings that we have from what we have gone through now is the ability for people to rise to the occasion when crisis strikes. So we have seen tremendous amount of leadership qualities, tremendous amount of evolving personal traits coming into play from across, not just limited to leaders, not just limited to people who are working in the organization, but from the external stakeholders and everyone who's interested in the right outcome. So overall, managing the business continuity in this challenging time has been a real new learning experience for most of us. I'm sure the panelists, as we go forward, will reflect their views in terms of how do we move from here on. So with this, I finish a brief on what I thought we'll share about the business continuity. And now I invite Ms. Jagvinde Pinny Mann for taking the next theme as to what is going to be the future of the workplace and what improvements or changes are we required to do in the way we work and the work processes that we have. So over to you, Jagvinde.
Thank you, Siti. Thank you, Rashmi, and the entire team for having us here today as panelists. Well, as we all know, COVID really hit us in a very strange and surprising manner, as I always call it. And what has it done to us? Actually, it has made us more creative, more innovative, and all of us are thinking what we thought was not possible is actually possible. I'll take you back to the time when we had the smartphone come in and we were saying, wow, everyone's connected. And look where we are today. Everyone's working from home and we are as productive, if not more. And I think every change comes with both sides of the coin, pros and cons. And we all had to quickly gear up and get to this point. So I'm going to talk a little about what do we see? Well, real space will always be there. It's a question I'm asked very often. Will real estate go down? Will the demand for space go down? Will people want to just work from home? So I'm going to take a very internal India view. We don't have offices at home. Our population is still very go to office, do a 9 to 6 job and come back home. So to gear up to that kind of work from home was a challenge for organizations and for us too, as I am with Microsoft. How do we get our engineers? How do we get the machines home? How do we make them comfortable? People don't have enough space in their house to have a separate office and the family. How are you going to bring family and work together? And often we were told, leave work at workplace and home at home. Well, here we had to bring it all together and really think through it. So that's my point, that how creative we all became, how innovative we all started thinking of new, methods. And of course, technology rules the world. As I say, technology is going to rule the world. Spaces are going to come together. You'll have to have digital transformation all across. We'll have to see things, which we can do from our phone, from our laptops, and really take away that pain of tying ourselves to one spot. So I have a few slides. I'll just walk you quickly through some of them. Travel, it's really going to change. We are not going to see people travel up and down the globe as we thought earlier. There's going to be an apprehension, but I always put a rider to all this. Human mind, human psychology. We forget so soon. Maybe 2 years down the line, we'll forget there was a pandemic and life may come back 100% to normalcy or even better. So we don't know. Virtual working. I still remember talking to somebody in the States and feeling, oh, we are not connected. It's so far away. We are talking through a machine. It's not real. But today you can see them, you smile at them, you share jokes, you share your work. That's going to be real world. That's the virtual world that we're getting into. And innovation. How are we going to push how we make our life easy, how we are going to be more innovative in every sphere. Move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So what is it going to be really? So every business, like CT had brought out, we'll have to think differently because every business has a different ask, a different component of work and roles and responsibilities. Is it going to be the old manufacturing world? We'll work in shifts and we'll do the production in such a way. Is it going to be that, yeah, part of the team comes in on certain days, part of the team works from home? We don't know. We'll all have to evolve with time. We'll all have to think through how we are going to do that. And it'll be very business specific. So I don't think there'll be a playbook written on that. I don't think there'll be any process. It'll be very individual business, individual team thinking through. Social distancing, I think, is going to become a norm. And I think we'll all be conscious of it and we'll all want to really have that. I think that's a good thing. I think we should all learn from it. We should start adhering to it. It's both healthy and it's a good thing to happen, but it has a huge impact to organizations. How are we going to accommodate everybody in our spaces? Are organizations ready to spend millions of dollars to create more space? So what is it going to be like? Well, there are still question marks to it, and I'm sure we'll find answers soon and sooner than later. Travel. Earlier we used to say, let's have team get-togethers. What are we doing now? We are talking on on Zoom. We are talking on Microsoft Teams. We have so many webinars. We have so many modes of communication. So I don't think that's going to be a necessity anymore, or anybody is really going to think about it. I won't go through all the points, but just to bring home the whole aspect of hygiene, cleanliness. What is sanitization actually taught us? It's nothing. It's just a basic day-to-day hygiene. And I think in India, our old scriptures and all really taught us how to be really clean, how our homes were, how we had our own physical hygiene in check. I think in this fast-moving world, we somewhere forgot about it. And this has really brought us back home to think that, yes, let's bring back sanitization as a must-do rather than as, a forgotten tool for us. So let's just start moving with the change. I think everyone will evolve with time. I think all of us will, the apprehensions that we had at our workspaces will go away shortly. And we have to, of course, pay much more attention. People like us who are running facilities, managing large portfolios, we've got to be very, very careful on how we are going to manage each spot of space in our areas, and how we're going to manage the inflow and outflow of people, because human, a person is more important than a machine. And how do we take care of that? We move to the next slide, please. Thank you. Thank you very much. So let's get into the digital world. The digital tools are really going to be ruling. As I said earlier, it's going to, what was an employee experience? We were always thinking a seamless employee experience, travel from home to work and work to home. It should be a seamless experience so the employee is 100% productive. Today, that's going to change. We will have to think of different tools to use. How can we use mobile? How can we call a lift? How can we order our coffee while we are sitting at a desk, or talk to someone while we are at home? So how do we manage our associations? How do we manage our deliverables from far away, or get into office and have a plan on day one? X team is going to come in and collaborate. And on day two, we'll have another team which is coming to collaborate, and that space is going to be multipurpose used. Now that's going to cause, how are we going to manage the sanitization? How are we going to clean up the space? How are we going to make an employee comfortable, understanding that somebody else has used that space? I do remember when fingerprint readers came in and we were quite excited about it. Well, it's out of the window. We need facial recognition technology, and we need to have touchless screens. We don't want anybody touching anything, as per the new guidelines of WHO, or guiding us that as much as touchless in your offices will really help you. So we'll get into new things, new tools, and I'm excited to see what really comes up. And I think a lot of organizations are already working. We already in Microsoft have a facial recognition technology, which we were just piloting. I think it will flow out into the market very soon. Could we move to the next slide, please? And I think that should be my last slide. Yes. So food services. How important is food for our employees? All of us, I think, look for a nice coffee, a nice snack, a super lunch, and we used to really think through how everything is served. Well, all that will have to be rethought. It's not that we have to change, but we have to rethink and reconfigure all this. And, part of it, of course, I sort of am on both sides. I think we are talking environment sustainable on one side. We are saying, let's save our planet. On the other, we are saying, let's have disposable cutlery and, not go in for sort of taking any chances with hygiene. So there is a fine line in between where all of us will have to take a decision and see what is really good and how we manage both. You're not going to really create so much of garbage and landfill. And at the same time, we don't want our employees feeling that they don't have a perfect sanitized set of cutlery, crockery to have their meals from. So I think some of those changes all of us can start thinking about and be creative and come up with different options. Back to you, Siti, for the next session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jagvinde, for that very insightful comment about what the workplaces are going to be as we go forward. So let's invite Anne with the next theme to be discussed, well-being of employees, right? So you spoke about an experience at the workplace, Jagvinde, and let's see how that experience gets connected to the well-being aspect of employees. And over to you, please.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm Anne, and I first do a little introduction. I work at Mapiq, and Mapiq is a smart office platform. My role as head of research, I have a background in psychology, so I'm really focused on why do people behave the way they do, and how can we make sure that they can make the best out of their workday. And before the pandemic even, we had a research project on well-being. So what we did is that we wanted to find out what is actually helping well-being at work, and how can we influence that. And after, of course, a couple of months now, we kind of revisit that research and look at it from the new perspective. How does well-being get influenced in times of corona, and how can we still make sure that people feel well and can contribute to the workplace? So that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to show you a framework that we came up with and give you a little bit of the background of research that I did, a lot of theoretical research that backs up some of the things that we might want to pay attention to in the upcoming months. So I'm going to now share my screen. It works. Yeah. This is the framework we came up with, the Mapiq pyramid of workplace well-being, and it's inspired by Maslow. I don't know if a lot of you guys know who he is, but he was the inventor of the hierarchy of needs, which was a very, very inventive framework in that time, because Maslow was the first psychologist who thought about human motivation from a positive side. So what he really believed in is that everybody wants to be the best version of themselves. And this was quite unknown in that time, because Maslow came up with this theory in 1944. And as we all know, that was not a really positive time for humankind. So I thought it was a good reference for maybe a little bit what we're facing now. And you see here 3 layers. Maslow's original pyramid had 5 layers, but we kind of transformed it into 3 to make it a little bit more simple. And I want to quickly go over the layers and zoom into one later on to give a little bit more information on. But first, what is well-being? For us, well-being at Mapiq is really that it means that an individual can be physically and mentally willing to contribute in the workplace and being engaged at work. Of course, now it's really not about being in the workplace, but still being engaged, which is very important, I would say. And for us, there were 3 layers, 3 themes that we see that you need to tap into if you want to make sure that people are still engaged and feel well at work. Now, first, we see the C level. It's the basic level, the concrete needs. And this is basically everything that a physical workplace can do to make sure that people are feeling healthy and well. So what you can think of is, for example, having natural light, having good posture, but also now, of course, having enough distance between each other. I already heard hygiene. Like now, it's kind of, there is something happening in this layer that we might want to pay attention to different things actually than we did in the past. But then after that layer, you move on to the belonging needs, and this is a very interesting layer, I would say. Which is really about making sure that people feel part of a bigger group, that they feel part of the company. And this really has to do with colleagues, of course. And I'm gonna elaborate on that a little bit later. On top, we see the actualization needs, which, according to Maslow, is really what we're all wanting to achieve, is that state where you feel so empowered, where you contribute to work, where you, do things you couldn't imagine, I think, and you get into that flow. Sometimes we all have experienced that, I hope, where you get into the flow and you forget the world around you and you just want to, work harder, maybe even. So these are 3 layers. And for today, because we don't have that much time, I want to focus on the belonging layer, because we really believe at our company that this is where we are hit the hardest at the moment. We see 4 things here in the belonging level which are important and are now actually under pressure. The first one is connection, and this connection doesn't necessarily only goes about being connected to your colleagues. It also has to do with a connection to the office. I heard that in India it is really also very important to go to the office, and that working from home wasn't really that regular or normal. Well, people have a really high place attachment, and I think we all know that when you come home, and even if there's nobody there, it still feels comfortable. We have a high sense of place attachment. Also, memories are attached to places. You know, when you come on a holiday and you are at the same place again, oh wow, you get a good feeling, or sometimes a bad feeling. And this place attachment is very important to not overlook in these times. People can really miss the office, basically. Then the second thing, contact, that of course refers to contact with colleagues, which is very important. And although we can get a lot of work done and get a lot of things also done through the video calls. Of course, we've noticed that it's very effective, but still face-to-face contact is not something I think we can definitely miss forever. Because, and then I move on to the third thing, we need confirmation in our job. We need feedback. We need to feel that we're doing the right thing. And that's not necessarily something that you get from your colleague from constantly working through a video screen. I think this is also an aspect that is now overlooked at the moment, because I think getting confirmation also is has a lot to do with non-verbal communication. You got a nod, or you see that someone is engaged in your conversation, for example. Those are little things that are very important during your workday and that are now a little bit under pressure due to all the video conferencing, where it's harder to do, basically, and also give feedback. It's not an ideal way to do that through video call. And then the last one, companionship. Yeah, for us, it's really something that it's nice if that happens, because if there's really friendship between colleagues, it can be the glue that gets information flowing also, and keeps the group together. So these 4 things are very important in our aspect and are now all 4 under pressure, and we need to rethink how we can support those 4 things, I think. Just give a little bit of more background. This is the Allen curve. It's a theory, also an old theory, 1977. But it lets you know that people are actually a little bit out of sight, out of mind. And we also think that email, for example, is really making us connected with everybody. But as you can see in this graph, you see on the horizontal as you see physical distance, and on the vertical as you see the communication, so how much people communicate. And you see that the email as well as the face-to-face conversations go down when the physical distance increases. And this is literally on the meter. So this is in the office space, this means that you have more communication with people that you see around you, and that this already goes for, I think, if you are in a circle, within 10 meters. So you can imagine now that when you don't see people on a serendipity effect, like you have to call them consciously, this is what's going to happen. We are going to actually communicate less with people that you don't see that much. This is also an interesting experiment that points this out. This is a research from Ben Waber, Interactions at Work, very interesting. I can recommend that to everybody. But what you see here is 3 networks at 3 different organizations, insurance organizations to be exact, and the dots are people and the lines are the proximity and the communication between those people. So we see on the left, we see a company which actually has very equal communication. People see each other at the office evenly. It's just a network in balance. And 2, you see kind of 2 groups who one is very, very intensive working together, and the other one a little bit less. And you have some people who are jumping in between. And then branch 3 is a really close group with a couple of outliers. And the question, of course, is which organization is most productive. And I wish I could ask you guys, but maybe in this scenario, this is not possible. But branch 1 is the most productive organization. So that network is actually what we should aspire to. And what's interesting to tell is that branch 2 is actually an organization with 2 levels, 2 floor levels. And this is not an effect you want. So I think this is also pointing out that we need to be careful about this, that this doesn't happen. Okay, so what can we do? Because that's what we're here for. And of course, I work at a tech company, so I will talk about the opportunities and the possibilities we have from a technical point of view. We should be aware that we should support non-familiar contacts. So not the colleagues that people already talk to, but maybe switch it up, that HR actually, plans coffees with people who are from completely different departments, but would see each other when having lunch, but now they don't. So keep that in mind. And another one, appreciation. I think it's very important that you still appreciate and give feedback and give confirmation. And I have a funny research that also, the way we write, of course, it's not only video conferencing, it's also a lot of typing and emailing. You can be very aware of that, be aware that it has consequences, that the type of words you use, this was an analysis on the type of words people use, that it has an effect on how someone else feels, and that you're maybe less aware of those effects, because you would normally say, oh, I guess, and then you smile, and then it's a totally different effect than when you type it. So be aware of that. Then provide a home-based check-in. I think that's something that's so important, and that's also something that we decided as Mapiq to work on a lot, because when the pandemic hit, we did a lot of interviews with our clients. What are they worried about? How can we help them? What are the biggest challenges they're facing now in their company to make sure people can work? And then they are starting to talk about very quickly about that when they get back to the office, that they had like, okay, how can we make sure that it's still safe, and that we support people to be with the right people in the office, because of course your capacity goes down, something with 50% at the moment. And here in Holland, we're now planning to go back slowly. How do you make sure then that, one, the office doesn't get an overload at once? So you want to regulate that, like who is going to come, and why are they coming, for example. And the second thing is that for your employees, they want to be there with their project group, or with their department, for example. So that was something that we started thinking about, like how can we still make sure that people, when they go to the office, they are there with the right people and they feel safe, and that on the other hand, the organizations feel comfortable providing that safe place, and that they can regulate capacity. Well, that's what we worked on for 4 weeks now, and this is what came out, office shifts, as we call it. Here you can see what we make for the organizations to make sure that they don't pass their capacity. So what you can do here as an organization is fill in your capacity for your office and be flexible with that, because of course regulations can change, we know that. So for now you can lower your capacity with half of your workplaces, maybe in steps build that up if it feels safe, if the pandemic doesn't hit again, but also you can scale it down if that's necessary. And you can also divide groups here. And this is very important, that the managers also can make priority groups of people who maybe, have a very difficult time working from home, or are business critical in some sense, that they get more access to the office and can come there on a more regular basis. Because this is then what we make for the employees, that when they can come to the office, they book a shift, basically. I already heard the words during the introduction. They can book a shift and they get a quota depending on the capacity and depending on their access profile. So they can still be in charge of their work day and still feel autonomous, like, hey, I decide when I want to go, and even talk to each other like, hey, should we go on Wednesday? I see it's still free. So really empower them to be back in the office when it's possible, and that it still feels safe. So that's really providing the check-in base for people and letting them back into the office is very important, because of course in the end we really feel that this would stimulate collaboration and teamwork, and that's what I think at this moment could use a boost. This was a short version of this story, but it's all written down, so you guys can find this, where I also talk a little bit more about the top layer and the lower layer. But for this, I wanted to end up with the belonging layer, because I think this is one of the most important things during this time to keep in mind. Thank you so much. I think it was really quick, but open for questions after the sessions.
Thank you very much, Anne, for that quick overview of how well-being can be managed going forward. And we liked the correlation established with Maslow's need theory and the well-being, pyramid that we created. That's very interesting. I'm sure our audiences will have more questions, and they will seek more information around that. Okay, thanks a lot. So we move on to the next theme, and the next theme is what would be the impact of COVID on the future workplace design? How can the existing workplaces transform to manage the post-COVID safety and hygiene requirements? What are some of the key factors to be considered in a BAU resumption strategy? And I invite Rima to take this forward, please.
Thank you, CT.
I'll just share my deck with the team. Thanks everyone for joining the session this afternoon. This is Rima from Emoser. For those who don't know what Emoser is, we are a global firm that designs and delivers the world's most advanced and effective workplaces. Like many of you who are joining us today, many of our clients are also looking to find ways to ensure that their business continuity is retained and in whatever ways they can, and they can resume the workspaces. And obviously the challenges are new, and many companies are not that well equipped or have not done that scenario planning to take them through this journey. So over the last few weeks, we've been hearing a lot of these questions from our clients and their end users, and people are wondering some deep dive questions about when do we go back to work, how do we prepare when we go back to work, what is our implementation plan, who's the first one to return, how do we ensure that we maintain social distancing in the workplace offices. So we have created a global team to assist our clients as they look for those guidance and re-enter the workplaces. And some of these strategies I would like to share with you as key takeaways from the session and which could be implemented. When we talk about the effort that we all need to take care when we re-enter the workplace, it's basically the effort that need to be taken right now, which is an immediate one, a short-term one, which are easy to achieve. And the other one is a longer term, which is for the workplace changes, which requires a bit of rethinking on a longer term, which may have some cost impact and some also its purpose of how to best support centralized and distributed workspaces. So while we design spaces, we all talk about a lot of aspects. When we design spaces, we see it through the lens of physical, social, and digital work environment. For the purpose of this session and the time that we have, I'd like to focus on the impact of physical spaces and the spaces in terms of the interiors, the well-being, the furniture, the MEP, and which is more people-centric workplace. Now, in terms of re-enter, when it comes about people, physical space, the physical space is constituted between people, space, and the infrastructure. With people, it includes mental well-being, physical health and protection, culture, and the connection between the people. For space, it'll include hygiene standards, disinfection, usage, density, entry and exit, and key gathering ideas for the concerns that are there with the facility team. In terms of infrastructure, there are a lot of things that are coming recently with regards to ISHRAE guidelines, how we can have clean air, how we can how can we enhance the India air quality, and what are the support that we can take with and without the landlord, and we can enhance the infrastructure within the offices. So in terms of people, the first one is the well-being, as Anna did mention just recently about how we can enhance the mental well-being within the employees. How can we orientate them to use the workspace in a better and effective manner? Maybe there could be a pre-arrival orientation package about what are the seats that can be utilized. How is it that we are distributing the seats to the workforce? Personal coaching, training, counseling will also be very key for the people. Individualized support and stress management is also something that most of our clients are looking at this point of time. There's also new and enhanced feedback platforms, protocol for expressing concerns. Also a system buddy neighbor check-in system that can be established. The second one is also an important one, which is physical health and protection. How is it that we can take care of the nutrition and health services that we are providing to the employees? How is the cafe management and pantry services management going to be done post-COVID? Whether we are reducing the strength of the work, strength of the capacity of the cafe, or how is it that we can provide healthy nutrition to the people and build their immunity? Companies are providing also personal protection equipments and also access to the dedicated disinfected stations nearby the employees when you're having a campus of around 10,000 people in a workplace. And also clear communication and a signage for promoting health is also very, very key when you go back to and return to your workplaces. Culture and connection is a very important aspect when you are in this situation, when we need to educate our people of how well they can utilize the workspace once they come back. Evaluation of this culture and how well this is communicated is going to be very key. Also, building a community which connects people virtually and not just physically within the social space is also a very key. How do we provide daily updates and positive information and story sharing to the people is also something which is good to know. And creating opportunities to give back in exchange and create purpose and meaning. Now, with regards to space, a lot of our clients are also wondering whether if we go back, how do we see the impact of the overall space? Can we use it? Does it mean that if we go back at 50% of the capacity, will we use do we need to reduce the real estate space in the future? But not really. But what we are talking right now is all about how is the same workspace can be utilized with small number of people when you give variety of work settings to them, where they can focus, where they can collaborate, but with respect of this physical social distancing. So the people are also splitting teams into A, B, C, and then alternate weeks and following the patterns to go back to the work. Sequencing and scheduling is also going to be very key so that you don't have too many people gathering towards the pantry and the recreation spaces. Establishing requirement for present versus non-present team members and determining what spaces should not be used in the beginning of the phase. People are also doing a lot of color coding on the plans when they resume back to the workspaces and educating their employees what are those spaces which should not be used or should be at least banned for the next few weeks until things get normal. So the entry and exit areas for the offices are also very key because there's a lot of queuing that happens when people come to the workspaces and they don't need to do their check-ins and all. So the elevators, the stairways are the ones that need some protocol and discipline to be established. Personal gears, outer layers, and inside and outside versus shoes. There are some clients who are also implementing some of these basic hygienes and standards right from the entry of the workplace for the employees. Key gathering areas. So there are a lot of collaborative areas that we see in the workspaces, the pantry, recreation, collaboration spaces, even the front desk and all. So some of these spaces may not be utilized to that capacity as it was used before. However, there is a lot of balance that we can create between the primary seats and the secondary seats so that you can establish, people can work or choose to work from anywhere and they can do seat booking system. Now, in terms of infrastructure, prioritize. There are a lot of elements which are on the landlord side, which needs some support from the landlord also, where they can enhance some of the infrastructure with regards to the equipments. For example, the UVGI filters is something which is becoming like a big suggestion from the lead perspective, as well as from the HVAC perspective, if that can be installed within the supply ductwork. As this is domicilial irradiation, and also in terms of your washrooms where you have maximum occupancy and you can't control the number of people going in and out, and then there is a consideration of having non-contact touchless mixer taps as well as WC flushes. Heat recovery modifications is also something which is key, and clients are also considering right now expanding the HVAC operations time so that there's a proper flush shut and flush in times for the air conditioning. The second aspect is the tenant side from the tenants, and where we also require a bit of the landlord support, where you can retrofit the UVGI within the FCUs. There's an optimal comfort level that needs to be maintained throughout the offices. Implementation of the pasteurization strategies that can be developed. Elimination of cold air drifts, that's also a key. Increase of exhaust ventilation fan speed in the washrooms is also going to be something that is a must-have once you resume work. There are a few things that we can do without having too much of cost impact. So like key staff personal protection, not using the fingerprint or the biometric until things get normal. So moving back to the cards, and security card readers could be developed, which allows access between 1 feet or 1.5 feet of range, and proximity to the motion sensors on all doors from inside. That's also key. And clients are anyways disabling the biometric at the present scenario. Phone devices, UV disinfection stations are also being implemented. These are some of the suggestions that we are right now developing and sharing with our clients, and I hope some of these were useful for you to implement in your workplace once you resume your work. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rima, for this wonderful presentation. Like the idea of integrating mental and physical aspects for the well-being of people, and it much relates to what earlier Anne mentioned about the overall well-being at workplace, and relates further to the experience element which Jagvinde mentioned in her presentation. So thanks a lot, and we will take the questions at the end of the session. We now move to the next theme, and the next theme is about what is the new normal. There is a lot of talk about new normal. So new normal, what is it going to be for our workplace? And it will be a mix of work from home and away. And how do we go about managing it? What are the critical service elements and other aspects that we will need to keep in mind? And how can technology bring everything together and enable? For this theme session, I invite Vikram Vidyala. Over to you, Vikram.
Yeah, sure. I'll just first make sure that I'm audible, Sadanandan.
Yeah, you are.
Thank you. Good afternoon, all. Thank you all for joining in. It's a pleasure to be able to speak about the new normal. The current, like Pinny, Anne, and Rima had covered specifically the onset of COVID and how life has changed. So I'll just first start with introduction. I'm Vikram from CBRE. And for CBRE, caters to, we are a real estate consultancy firm catering to both developers as well as occupiers across the sectors, commercial, offices, industrial, warehousing and logistics, retail, healthcare, and so on. I have some presentation that would cover this topic. So more specifically, I cater to the construction industry, the project management wing of CBRE. New normal is something that we've heard very often now. So what is new normal? If I have to just put it in a more colloquial way, it's more of a journey and not a destination. And there are a lot of new normals. It's just not one new normal. So it's more like, if you have to summarize all that, the way we see it is it's a state of mind. So if you look at now we've discussed about after the onset of COVID, we have figured out a way to cope with this as part of the business continuity. Work from home is a trend that started, and Ms. Pinny covered. India lacks as a country, and we have not, our homes are not equipped to deal with a home office kind of an environment. So, that's something. So if you look at the current context, it's not something that works well, and there are feedback coming in. Even when Sadanandan covered the initial bit, it was clear that not the acceptance of work from home is not from a feedback point of view is not something that everybody will continue to look at. So, and also from an efficiency standpoint, like if you talk about productivity, a lot of talk about productivity as well, where companies are looking at productivity of their employees by adopting a new work from home concept. In the COVID context, productivity is very different. And we have to look at it where there are very few distractions for the workers, for everybody to take up their work. And as we move on and get more to a normal situation, productivity is something that kind of will have to be looked at in a new way. So that's something that we have to keep in mind as we see. In a huge, when we look at occupiers, there's a huge variation in preparedness for the experience of home working, and how much of it will stick. As things become normal, and if probably a vaccination is found, and when we have the opportunity to come and carry on our work with the much needed social interactions and collaboration as we speak, then the work from home or home office kind of working would be relevant or not. That's something that just look at it. That gives us a perspective on how to look at the new normal. And also from a shifting towards agility, certainly occupiers are looking at shifting to be more agile, and the location strategy. So a lot of in the recent past, we have seen all the occupiers consolidating into offices who we were spread out into different locations, etc. They were all looking at consolidation now, and until recently. And given the current context, again, there is a need for forensic review of the location strategy and how the workplace practices would be, would kind of define these strategies. So there's a tension between the concentration and dispersion, so that whether we have the offices consolidate into a single office, or probably have multiple offices, smaller offices across locations. That's something that is something that is looking at that, having an impact on the way the occupiers look at their strategy. And also in terms of the occupiers mindset, we did there's a certain survey that we carried out, and as you see, what's the immediate and long term, how does the occupier, what is their mindset? It certainly clearly looks at the investment in technology to support remote working is something that we definitely see an increased trend. The green bars actually shows an increase in the trend of investment in technology to support remote working, and also in terms of adoption of flexible working. So that's something that is certainly, when the survey came and the reports or the results of the survey came up, it clearly looked at these are the two areas where there is a lot of belief that this would certainly go and increase. So that's the trend that we are looking at. So one of the things is, how do we prepare ourselves? So when we look at what has happened is the scale at which this particular COVID, has impacted globally, and also what it has done, and the pace at which also happened, left very little time to actually look at backups and alternatives, etc. So certainly, one of the key lessons that I think all across the board, what we've learned is that we need to be better prepared. So if you look at currently the focus areas in terms of preparedness, being prepared, certainly the three key areas in terms of network resilience, what it does is that to be able to communicate with, like how Sadanandan had mentioned earlier, in the current context of being in touch with everyone, and communication plays a very key role to ensure that the flow of information across the board is something that key to respond to the business needs. So that's something that all occupiers certainly are looking at in terms of network resilience. And then also inventory, because what it did is that when things started drying up, the logistical issues that were faced. So certainly in terms of the way inventory would be looked up, how much do we stock up? That's something that certainly will be a key area that which will come into play when it comes to approaching strategies towards preparing for our workplaces. And certainly technology, I think this is something that the way I would put it is, in terms, technology is something that will always, it's always been there. And more right now, it has moved from being an enabler to actually becoming an essential requirement for all the, all the businesses and the way. So it's more of adoption of technology is what has actually changed. Even if this remote working is something that has actually forced or rather gotten the adoption of technology across age groups and across social sections. So all of this, the adoption of technology is where the actual change is. So that's clearly something that adoption of technology to do the work, whether how do you do meetings, how do you do team meetings, or how do you congregate at the large, with a large town hall kind of a setup, everything kind of technology will continue to drive. And not just that, and there are more areas, in terms of so there are also, in terms of, Rima spoke about the immediate as well as the, long-term impact. So as we see, when it look at, workplaces, are there any guidelines? Are there any guidelines, or are there any codes to design the offices? The new offices or the new normal as we speak. So essentially, there are the short answer is that there are no there are only there are no codes as such. There are guidelines. There are guidelines for sure, but there are no codes specifically. So it's only more of best practices. So knowledge network, and a lot of countries actually, if you look at it, India, we are going through it. I think in terms of the cycle, there are countries which have actually come out of COVID and they are already, the business as usual is already started. And there have been countries like Vietnam and and a few others who have actually were ahead of India. So in terms of having the knowledge to get best practices, draw the best practices from what how other countries are dealing with it, other occupiers are dealing with it. That is something that is very, very key here to actually the response to how we take up the COVID situation. So then if you look at broadly what we've covered is, when it comes to return to work plan, there are reset recommendations that we have with respect to how the technology solutions can be taken up. Occupancy planning, there's a lot of discussion about densities, and it's also design and engineering, what works, what doesn't work, and in terms of touchless technology and so on and so forth. And health and safety obviously is at the center of all of this, employee wellness. And as far as the most important aspect is, what is it going to cost for anyone who's going to take up? So what is the impact of the new normal in terms of cost? So cost advisory is something that needs to be looked at from a reset recommendation point of view. And once all of this is placed, obviously we do have the the implementation aspect, when starting with change management all over the from project management, facility management, and move management of all the workplaces when it has to be done. So primarily best practices are already there. A lot of countries, we do have the knowledge of knowing what the other countries who have actually come out of the COVID have implemented, not just across the commercial offices, but across industrial logistics space, take it retail or healthcare. There are a lot of new trends that are emerging, and new, unique, quirky ways, not very sophisticated, but also quirky ways of dealing with the current situation, and also in a long term what would certainly work. So there are a lot of these solutions that are available which can be drawn upon through best practices, and having a stored knowledge borrowed from countries who are ahead of us in terms of the curve. So as far as the service elements goes, what are the key drivers from when companies are looking to set up their workplaces from a long-term perspective? Essentially, any workplace has to look at their density and space ratios. Rima has already covered that extensively in the desk. But primarily at the center of all this is the the employee, the mental health, the circulation design. There are a lot of various docket of advisories which are available to look at what the best practices are with respect to bringing in the employees back to the office. Most importantly, confidence of the employees that my office or my workplace where I go is safe enough for me to carry out my work individually as well as in groups when I am meeting with other people. So that's the mindset I think is extremely important. So any workplace which covers for the workforce these aspects are something that will certainly set the new benchmark. And wellness is at the center of it. So with respect to how the work guidelines are taken up in terms of cleaning protocols and the behavioral aspects, including the awareness of self sanitization, hygiene, which Ms. Pinny covered during her discussion. These are the key factors which play a key role in setting up the new normal. So what will change in terms of, these are more of the opportunities. Certainly, if you look at starting from an occupier's point of view, multiple markets for sourcing materials. This, like I covered in the inventory, the supply chain, it plays a really key part. We were highly dependent on importing a lot of stuff, which probably might, and also from a single source in a certain country. So we probably have to look at the way what we expecting to happen is to source from multiple markets and also try and be more self-reliant and get some indigenous specification into the bouquet as well. And in terms of diversification of production and operational risks, that's something that companies will certainly look at. Automation in warehouse distribution for the logistics and warehousing sector. And in terms of last mile delivery, autonomous vehicles and drones, these are things that we are expecting, and all the technology associated with that will certainly set a different paradigm for people to look at the way they will source materials and how things will get delivered to their last mile. And urban logistics demand, obviously, a lot of these social distancing and whatever restrictions, jurisdictional restrictions that has been put in place has actually completely changed the way urban logistics demand would be taken up. There are a lot of these concepts in terms of rather than having large warehouses to cut down into smaller distribution centers to cater to end users is something that a clear trend that we see across the on the logistics sector. And in terms of flexible warehousing demand is something that we expect to see. And then similarly, cold chain to handle temperature sensitive products. So these are all the other areas that certainly all of these are all going to be driven by technology. So that's the role that technology is going to play. So essentially, to summarize all of it, necessity, is something which is, this has now become a need to look at, like how Pinny put it, innovation is something that is going to be key here. Innovation in the sense that there is a need for us to look at things differently. So that's driven by that need. I'm sure there are a lot of new things, new solutions, which have been covered by the panel fellow speakers and panelists, will certainly drive the way forward. And that, like I said, will set many new normals. And the physical manifestation of the need basis what we will look forward to is going to set the way forward. So that's how I'd close that. And hand it over back to Sadanandan.
Thank you very much, Vikram, in helping us to sort of imagine what the new normal would be, and very interesting points about how we will see a changing trend in investment in technology for remote working, how we need to reset our workplaces, and of course the wave of structural changes that are expected. So very interesting perspectives. Thanks a lot for that. And now we have all our panelists on the screen now, and may I request you to come up as well. So I think we have time for some questions. Rashmi, are you
Yes,
sharing the
yes,
question?
I'm right here.
Thank you.
So I first would request. So first of all, thank you so much, panel members, for your amazing insights into like literally your in-depth knowledge on every single topic. I know Ms. Mann covered from travel to food in cafeteria to everything. Reema touched upon the entire genesis of the design and the entire aspect. Vikram went on to, and even I think Anne touched upon majorly into how technology is impacting us, and Sadanandan sir got us on board as to how BCM is being implemented across companies and what are the major measures that are being taken. I think we kind of wrapped up a whole gamut of content into this little webinar. So just before we take on to the Q&A, we have this small poll session that we'll be riding along with the Q&A that I'll be asking my speakers here. If Aisha, if you can just probably pop up the questions and the polls, probably the audience can reply back to it. Now, going to the Q&A, we can take the first one for Miss Pinny. So, all right. So the first question that goes to you is how do you see operations extending the working hours from 8 to 10 to 24/7 going ahead in the future, future times, in order to increase efficiency and the effectiveness of businesses? So obviously, time scales have already increased. So how do you think the companies are going to handle this, Ms. Penny?
Yeah, thank you, Rashmi. I think that's a great question. And I think everybody who we've been talking to says, I have extended work hours.
Yeah.
Do you know, everybody seems to be working 24/7.
Absolutely.
So I think because work from home is a new concept, it's a new way of us working. Earlier, it used to be a luxury that, today I'm going to work from home, kind of thing.
Right.
We need to definitely draw boundaries. And I think where a key component comes in is your wellness. We need to ensure we prioritize time off for having a meal, time off for taking a break, or being flexible. I think flexibility in your deliverables and discussions with your managers that, and I'll give it to you with examples. I have a person in my team who says, I can't help it. I have homeschool in the morning. I have to be with my child.
Absolutely.
And that's real. Let's be real. If you're working from home, well, that's a priority. So let's prioritize that. And then maybe later in the afternoon, you could pick that task up and finish it. So I think a lot of flexibility needs to come in, a lot of interaction within your manager and your teams need to be there. And we've been talking of D&I for a very long time in our country. And we've been trying to get the women folks into the workforce. And here's a great challenge for everybody. Are you supportive of it at home because it's work from home? And you really understand how multitasking can happen here and what's successful. So I think there are lots of pieces in this puzzle which need to be put together. And truly, if I say, I think it is a collaborative home and official work to come together. And please, please, my message to everybody out there, prioritize, take time off for your meals. I hear people saying, I didn't eat lunch today. I never got the time. Please don't do that to yourself. It's really not worth it. So I hope that answers the question, Rashmi.
Sure. That's actually pretty like self has to come first, and then probably this. That
Correct.
is exactly like slogo then we must be following. The second question is for Reema, actually. Reema, the question is, going forward with the configuration of workspaces, do you see a trend of new concept of flex cabins coming up in order to squeeze in more workspaces and facilities? Do you see this concept developing? This is probably to do a lot with the flexibility that you also mentioned. So what's your take on that, Reema?
Yeah, thanks, Rashmi. It's a very good question. We are already hearing these requests from the companies that we are working for and designing the workspaces. Clients are basically moving out of a lot of enclosed spaces and very reluctant to even use meeting rooms facility. So how is it that they can create these solo spaces and quiet spaces? Why do you really need cabins? I mean, at first place, basically when you need privacy or you need some focus work to be done, which you can't do in an open area. So there is a transient workspace sort of a concept that is being developed, which is in between a normal open office workspace and an enclosed space. These are those kind of work standards which are developed, which allows people to work in an open environment, but not get disturbed or being being in a distractive environment with a lot of people being around. So yes, this flex cabins, flex meeting rooms, open discussion spaces where you can actually have a one-on-one chat without bothering the rest of the crowd around you. So those are some trends that we're already foreseeing it, not just due to the COVID impact, but before as well.
Correct. Yeah, that's actually true. We did see a lot of shifts, like to open, and then we had this debate on big open flows. Do they have hell or no? And then we went to private spaces and all these things. Anyway, now coming to the third question, we have this specifically for you, Vikram. The question is, do you think quality will take a backseat while managing products, as time lost during this pandemic may have priorities for timely completions? So what is your take on that?
So quality, plays a major role in selection of a solution. So I think quality will never take a backseat. But it needs to be seen in a certain light. If there is most occupiers are facing a situation where it's a time versus quality. So I mean, for instance, there are solutions which are available indigenously versus there are solutions which are available which you have to import. And this is relative. Like I said, this is relative.
Correct.
Essentially, in the short term, where you're already, I mean, there are situations in the short term where clients have embarked upon a project, and there are certain time pressures. Obviously, because every business revolves around having the projects completed in a certain time frame. Under such time pressures, only certain solutions which are available might be that could be one of the solutions. But I think from looking at it from a long-term perspective, certainly it is not quality will never take a backseat. So that's how we need to look at. It's what, like I said, business actually demands kind of drive the outcome. So it's not. It's again relative. And to summarize, look at from a short-term perspective, they might, look at solutions which are having a shorter lead, a shorter lead, as opposed to from a long-term perspective where quality is something that will continue to be looked at in a new light, in a new way.
Absolutely. I actually, in fact, even I agree with you. Quality can probably never take backseat, especially at the time and age that we are moving towards in. I do completely agree with you. Now, this third question, the next question is actually, Mr. Sadanandan and Mr. Pinny, both of y'all can probably take it. This particular question is, given that work from home has taken so much precedence, can work from home be threatening to the facility management business? Due to pandemic, we all are working from home, which gives us a lot of carbon footprint, carbon footprint savings, energy savings, and a huge OPEX savings. I hope you all can also read the questions in your Q&A. This particular question is quite interesting. It would be great for you all to take it on. So most IT and ITES companies, exactly as your profiles are willing to implement work from home. So what does this say for the facility management industry and the professionals thereon? Please, both of you all can probably contribute to it. Yes.
So the lady gets the first chance.
Okay. Miss.
So, Siti, go ahead. I've answered one. Go ahead after you, please.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting question, as you put it, Rashmi, but it's also very difficult questions to answer. But as we see, in the short span of 2 months, many paradigms have altered and changed, right? At one point, as Pinny was mentioning in our session, that work from home was a luxury and it was a unique privilege someone would seek for. But today, we have organizations, at 98, 99% work from home, and they are still delivering, right? So obviously, the thought processes are going to change, and if you, all of us who read the media and social media and print, we can see that many organizations are already announcing that how their future work practices would alter, right? So that is going to be a reality. That is part of the new normal which Vikram was talking about.
Correct, yes.
Will that be 100% everyone working from home? I say it is not going to be so. So there will be a right mix, a balanced mix of both work from office and away, because that is going to be a reality. We need to accept it. Now, that is going to be the fact, and various elements related to that would also need to get adjusted, right? Which would mean that, whether it is going to threaten the facilities management as an industry, my answer is no. Will it impact their businesses, and will they see some reduction in their portfolios? My answer is yes, possibly.
Wow. That's still pretty interesting. Pinny,
thank
just want to add a few words.
So I'm going to say the hub and spoke model would be, I think, the way forward. From the real estate aspect, I think we will have multiple spots for people to just plug in and play if they want to do that. Organizations could facilitate that. And that stems purely from the work from home concept that, we still are not so equipped with home office. From a facility management perspective, I really don't see a reduction, but I see a trend where they have to up their skills. They will definitely have to start reinventing the way facility management is done. They will have to use innovative methods. They'll have to use robots. We keep talking about robots and drones and things. At the end of it, there is a human aspect to it. So you have to upskill yourself. You have to become more relevant in the new times, and also be more creative in solution usage. Like our janitorials and stuff, you have to be more creative, because price point, delivery, and skill set, I think, have to go hand in hand. So it's going to be a very interesting way forward. And I wish I could open a school for that, actually. It's quite interesting. Yeah. Thank you, Rashmi. Thanks.
In fact, I'm pretty sure this must be even impacting companies like CBRE, who are actually felicitating and catering to companies. So now just we'll take on a couple of more questions. The next question here is for you, and probably if you can enlighten us on your thoughts on this. The question says, how can AI, which is artificial intelligence, how can AI impact the new normal in the upcoming times? What role can AI play? What role can data play for the new normal that is coming up as such? So if you can probably say a few words on that. Your mic is on mute, Anne. Your mic is on mute. Just
Okay.
and just 1 minute.
The host is constantly doing my thing, so I'm not empowered. Sorry.
Sorry. Yes.
Good. No, that's okay. Well, good topic. I
Please.
think it has a lot of impact, data and how we look at it, especially to empower employees, actually, because I think like we can definitely very soon already see patterns in the office. When you have already a smart office technology in place, you can already start measuring, hey, how many people, for example, are allowed and how many are actually coming, and then where are they gathering and who are those people. You can actually help them.
Okay.
Giving predictions already, like, hey guys, I see that 3 of your teammates are going in 3 days, or they booked a shift, for example, in our scenario. Shouldn't you come too? Or, you know, make sure that you're constantly aware of where we can help getting the right people together. I think data and sorry, just it has a big role to play, definitely. AI.
Okay, all right, that's nice. We still have a lot of questions that are coming in. We are dismissing quite of them. I just want to ask the panels, can we still take a couple of more, or how do you all want to do this as such?
I'm fine to spend, some more time.
We'll just take few more questions that are there, and probably we can wind this up. The next one is actually there are a lot of people who are actually asking about co-working spaces. So I'll just take one of those, and y'all can probably answer. Vikram, Miss Pinny, Sadanandan, so all of y'all can probably just contribute to what your thoughts are on this. The question is, how do you see co-working getting impacted with post-COVID scenario, and whether it will transform into its next version, co-working 2.0? And if so, how? This question mainly because co-working, though it started off as a lot of, it started for entrepreneurs and startups, we realized that a lot of companies and MNCs had started taking up co-working spaces. So I just want to understand from your end, given that y'all are still going to be, the crowd is still going to be working from remote locations, how co-working is going to be impacted from your point of view as such?
Okay,
anyone can probably take it. Sure.
So obviously, co-working space was a good, thing to have, and not only, as you said, it was being used by the startups and many of us large organizations also. It it certainly helps the hub and spoke model what Pinny was speaking about. We don't have to create the office workspaces and infrastructure at multiple locations. But within a city, if there are co-working spaces available, we look at facilitating, enabling our employees to work closer to home, or avoid the long commute, etc. And such co-working spaces were being used even by large organizations, right? Now, but definitely, as the question itself says, it has to go through a 2.0 version, because currently, whatever co-working spaces, at least what I'm aware of, are created with specific design models for multiple people to work from, but it may not really follow all the guidelines and all the requirements which Rima had sort of covered in her suggestion for what could be the requirement post-COVID. And the fact is that we don't know when the COVID is actually going to end. So it is not post-COVID, it's actually continuing with COVID, right? So obviously there would need to be a certain 2.0 approach to be taken by them. But
absolutely,
as a whole, I think they are not going to be irrelevant. They will still be relevant to the market.
Okay, all right, okay.
Yeah, so let me add to that, Rashmi. I think the co-working world will have to tweak their space model to business ask.
Correct.
Do you know? So let's take an example of a technology organization. They need higher bandwidth. They need privacy. Their data has to be secure and safe. So I think some of that will have to be built in, and it will be a different cost model, because co-working started as a plug and play solution where it was easy and it was cost effective. Now,
Yes.
organizations would want to use it because of social distancing and ensuring that, you have adequate space and you're facilitating, especially for sales and marketing people when they are going across towns, cities, traffic and pollution, etc., putting all that together. So they may have to customize the co-work space, make it more, may not be 100% to the guideline of an organization, but let's call it, a lighter version, or call it an enterprise model, or call it a clone of one of the models, and say that, that's what you'll get. And of course, you have to pay a price for that. So I think that would be the future for co-working, because vanilla co-working is not going to be relevant anymore. That was for startups and, just a place to park yourself for a couple of hours.
Absolutely. I completely agree. We'll take last couple of questions. There is one that has come from Miss Sonal Verma. This is from a law firm, actually. It's a Legacy partner. So she's, in fact, when I was intrigued about this question, she asked, would there be consideration of infrastructure costs for working from home in the new world? Obviously, like, given that company has shifted its people onto it, I can see smiles going bright up on Ms. Pinny and Sadanandan's faces. But how have the companies tackled this particular issue about infrastructure costs for, the staff working from home as such?
Very interesting, CT. I'll just take a second on this. It's such a live question. It's such a burning question in every organization. What do we do?
Absolutely.
What do we do? And today in LinkedIn, there was this message from Google that they're going to give $1,000 for a home office setup. Wow.
Absolutely.
Is that true?
Okay.
And is that going to be implemented across the globe? Well, we don't know. Organizations will definitely have to start thinking. And let me tell you, we facilitated our employees because of ergonomic chairs requirement. We don't want them, having to face challenges at home. So we provided chairs.
Absolutely.
And I think slowly we'll have to. I think it may become a norm that there would be some kind of expense. Of course, there would be a limit to it, but some kind of expense and some support from every organization, because going forward, this is going to be a way of life for us,
Absolutely.
CT, go ahead.
I couldn't agree more with that point. Absolutely, because it is going to be an accepted norm going forward. And obviously, there is a responsibility on the organization as well to make sure that the employee is enabled to be productive and engaged with the work, right? So if there is a need for an allowance, as she was mentioning, some company has already offered to be provided. It is not just giving them the furniture allowance. There has to be good broadband connectivity. There, for certain roles, even might be there is a need for a redundancy, that if one connectivity fails, there has to be an alternate, right? So I think this would need to be actually thought through, and companies will need to tailor make what their specific requirements are. So there cannot be a one size fit all approach here, and each business will need to review it from their people strategy and their business requirement, and then put together a plan. But I think it is it would be the need of the hour. There is no
absolutely.
Yeah. The flip side of it, you see, if people are not coming to office, there is a lot of savings from the operational expenses the companies will actually end up making, right?
Correct. Yeah. Absolutely. I agree on that.
And this is my personal view.
Okay, that's absolutely. No, I do agree. And
sorry, I'd just like to add to that, City and Penny. My view is slightly differing, and I did cover when I addressed that. When we look at, when we get on calls during the lockdown situation, as everybody is aware that people are working from home, you don't mind someone at the background, some child crying, or you could suddenly see some screen, some calling bell, you kind of discount those in the
Absolutely.
lockdown situation. But
Absolutely.
as we move on to as we move on, you would all of to get back to our routines and look forward to the normal way of working, from how efficiently we work from office. So the efficiencies are going to be looked at in new light. When
Absolutely.
such things happen, and then you still have situations where when you're on a call, important call, and there are distractions coming because of some background noises, etc. Now, how would you put a value to that? It's difficult
Absolutely.
to exercise. So like Ms. Pinny and CT covered, there are certain things
Mm.
that are tangible, and then you can add a certain value to that expense and probably provide for. Unfortunately, the cross section that most of the companies employ are so diverse and
Mm-hmm.
varied. Like I said, the set few who have actually which are in the top of the hierarchy, or they would probably can set up a certain room, etc., where all of this a near home office can become a reality. But otherwise, I
Absolutely.
to cater to a larger, which is about 70% of the cross section of the workforce, actually
Okay.
put value to getting an work environment as close to an office is something that's a hard solution to provide. So, like I
Oh,
said, to look at this situation during COVID or through COVID is very different from looking at it post-COVID scenario when we are really
absolutely.
that effective work environment.
Correct. Now we'll just take this one last question, and Vikram, this is actually for you itself. The question goes like, and this I'm specifically asking to you because I know your company is something that deals with several organizations, deals with several clientele, and you're probably how the market is, how their aspiration is. So the question goes like, how much of IoT and automation platforms do we see getting adopted by enterprises, which can transform workspaces into smart workplace environment? And do you see that acceptance coming into companies? Do you see that going forward? How has your experience been in this particular regard as such?
Yeah, so I think there are two parts to the question, Rashmi. So yeah, our experiences with the adoption of IoT, from an implementation standpoint, for clients who have looked at implementing those. Obviously, it's a new trend in the workplace, and there were, I think, a lot of companies are looking to embrace that IoT implementation of IoT. But there is a certain, limitation there, primarily when all of IoT has to be on a certain, from a technology standpoint, the IT, the servers are where IoT, from a data protection point of view, the IT company, the IT of the companies, the IT team, IT department of the companies have set some, have some limitations in terms of how will actually get merged with the internal IT networks. So there are some firewall related issues where they did not want that to happen. So I think that was the past. That was why we dealt with. So therefore, although IoT was largely there for companies to use, but there are very few takers for it, primarily owing to the limitations on the IT setup. We see that now the whole thing will be looked at in a new context, mapping usage of workplace is now as important as data protection. Currently, like I said, at the core of it, the filter of employee hygiene, health, and which in terms of the brief to a designer to design the workplaces, that actually starts with the first filter. So while initially, until recently, the merging the IoT and the IT platforms together was a constraint. But we expect that as we move along, considering that this new layer, a new filter is at how the workplace gets used, and that becomes as important as the data itself.
Okay.
We see that more and more companies would embrace, IoT to be implemented in their workplace.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I guess with this, we'll wrap up the entire webinar and the session. My most thanks and true, like real warm appreciation to each and every speaker present here for taking out your time from your schedules and coming back here. I know the lockdown is ending, so all of y'all must be in one whole gamut of how to get back and make this transition happen with each of your companies. But thank you so much for taking out your time and being with us here today. Thank you, Sadanandan sir, so for beautifully moderating this. I know we have, I think we've had discussions going on since 2 days with the entire panel members, with the presentations and the visuals and everything. Thank you so much for coordinating that with us. Miss Pinny, Miss Vidyala, and thank you so much for coming all the way from Netherlands to join us. Reema, thank you so much for so beautifully sharing this with us. So thank you so much. We still have a lot of questions that are still coming in. What I could do is, unfortunately, because of the time constraint, we'll be ending this, but I could probably send it to each of the speakers to whom it's directed. If you all can probably just share 2 quick words in our post-event mails, we can probably send it to them and maybe get the questions answered. So thank you so much. I think we'll end the session here right now, and thank you so much to Wipro Lighting for making this happen. We have the next webinar also scheduled very shortly, which is on reimagining the new normal, the next normal that is coming up as such. So we hope to see all of you all present there. Thank you so much once again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you very much.
everyone.
It has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yes,
Bye.
thank you.